So, Bob, as you were heading over, and I walked upstairs to unlock the door for you so that you could just walk in. I always wanted to live in a house like that where your friends just walk in the house instead of knocking on the door. That's the house we grew up in as a child. Our door was never locked. Even when we left the house for like a week, we wouldn't lock the door because I don't know if we knew where the key was. Because when you're 6 people in a small neighborhood, but close-knit neighborhood, every house in my neighborhood had kids my age, and we just would run in and out of everyone's houses, right? And dogs didn't know leashes. Dogs just roamed as well, which led to the occasional stepping in some dog shit every now and then. And I like that kind of vibe. My wife isn't so into it, but I am. I want people just to walk in. Plus, it makes it so much easier with the dogs because if you just sort of burst in, it takes the dogs like half a second to realize that you're here, and then they ramp up and attack you after you've come in the house. But if you knock on the door, then they go berserk, and then I go to the door and I open up, and you're trying to get in. The dogs are rushing out the door. It creates so much more chaos. So it's so much better if you just walk in, And I just kind of like that feeling of like you're like family,
Oh, thanks.
Anyway, so I walk upstairs and I unlock the door, and I think, what a wonderful life that I have. That for work, this is a work day. It's Monday morning right now, right? On a Monday morning, on a work day, my best friend comes over and we can just talk. And that's my job. That's what I get paid. And you get paid. We get paid to do this. And I can sit here in my jeans and my REM shirt, and you can sit here in your jeans and your Penn State sweatshirt, and I can drink my coffee out of my Psychology in Seattle merch tumbler that, is a quote that I have said. It's like my own dumb quote. If being healthy means being corny, then be corny is on here. And
it's like etched in.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just, I'm just so fortunate. I don't have to fight a commute. I don't have to sit in some fluorescent office. I don't have to deal with some asshole boss or anything. I could just sit here, put my feet up, and talk with my best friend and get paid for it.
Wow.
Because of the listeners.
That's true.
It's because of them. So let's get into it. What do you say, Bob?
Sure, let's get into it.
Long-term anonymous patron. He says, "Hi, Kirk and Bob. I find myself very attracted to my therapist. She's very compassionate, caring, and supportive. Basically everything I'd like in a partner. Compassionate, caring, and supportive. I also tend to idealize her. I idealize her. For the record, I am preoccupied. Given how perceptive she is, I feel like she can tell. And it makes me feel embarrassed and ashamed. What do you think I should do? Thank you for making the world a better place." Bob, what do you think?
Oh, you know what I think. I say the same thing I always say, which is, you should definitely talk about this. I mean, I've talked about my sexual feelings towards my therapist. I'm not even gay. Yeah, you should just talk about it.
Have you talked about that on the podcast?
No, not here. No, I never mentioned it. I don't think I've ever mentioned it to Colleen. Just happened to mention it right now.
Well, tell us about it if you want to.
No, I don't want to talk about that any further. Thanks very much.
But that you have it.
Yeah.
And notice it.
Yeah.
And you frame it in the same way you would if a client had that, if another person had it, of how do you frame it?
Well, it's just a transferential response. It's not that big a deal. I mean, it always feels like a big deal to us because we're in the middle of it, right? So the person that wrote in, and then me with when my feelings come up. So it always feels like a big deal. But in the land of therapy, it's pretty standard. Therapists understand this stuff.
Why does it happen?
I think it happens because people either do or want to feel safe, and we are sexual creatures, and it's not. We have a narrow view of when sexual attraction will show up. And we are weird when it comes to sex. We're really rigid and stupid. And so this is just normal. It's just normal, psychosexual, whatever. It's just normal. And it happens, and your therapist is not going to be surprised. It's hard to say if they know or not. They might know, or they might just sort of expect it that it's there sometimes.
I would doubt that she would know the specifics, though.
Yeah.
I mean, unless he's just drooling over her with a giant boner, I imagine that it'd be hard, so to speak, to know.
Yeah.
You know, he's saying that, I find myself very attracted to my therapist.
Sure.
Now, idealizing her, she probably does feel that to some extent.
Yeah.
And if you're talking openly about being preoccupied attachment, given, well, depending on what sort of orientation she is as a therapist, she probably expects it to happen. But I'm guessing that this embarrassment and shame is a product of not only society for being sex negative and being weird about these sorts of things, but also just the reason why you're preoccupied is because you had caregivers that were insufficiently attuned and perhaps abusive or off-putting or humiliating or shaming of you. And as you become more seen, you become more embarrassed and ashamed because that's what happened to you when you were young. And so that's the sweet spot. That's the corrective experience. I've seen the sexual attraction to therapists slightly differently over time, pretty much all in the same camp, but slightly differently. And I can't imagine that my point of view is unique, but the new place that I kind of see it is that, and like I said, it's just a variation on things I've said before, but the metaphor that I'll say, it's like, have you ever suddenly you walk in the door coming home from doing errands or something, and all of a sudden you have to go number 2 or number 1? Like all of a sudden it's just like this overwhelming urge. I guess the more poignant example is number 2, where that's more of an involuntary kind of thing. All of a sudden you're crowning, as they say. You're dilating. And it's an emergency.
Uh-huh.
So biologically, the stool, if you will, was knocking at the door for a while. I mean, I don't know I'm not a...
Suddenly your poop moved, 30 feet down through and over?
It must have been waiting there in the wings.
Right.
And all of a sudden, coincidentally, as soon as you come home, no. It's an association. Right. Your butt smells your own toilet and says, all right, I've been waiting. Now it's time. I was letting you off the hook because I didn't want you to shit your pants on the way home. Right. But not going to lie, it was close to shitting your pants on the way home. So now is the time to have that urge. And sometimes people will report shitting their pants on the way to the toilet. It's like, but when they were in the car, they didn't notice anything, So it's the same when it comes to being sexually attracted to your therapist for a lot of people, I think. There was this overwhelming urge to attach, but also to feel safe sexuality, to get that need met. Not only to have your sexual interaction needs met, to have sexual interactions with people, but we also have a need to feel sexual energy. It's important for us to have that, that arousal and that urge, right? And it's been knocking at the door in this imperceptible way because it's waiting to come out, and it needs to come out. It's a biological necessity for most people. And then, living life and you're not safe. You're essentially driving around, or you're in the mall, and your sexuality is saying, well, we're nowhere near a toilet that we feel safe with.
This metaphor's terrible.
There's toilets at the mall, but
they're not your toilet.
But they're not your toilets. God knows what's going on in those bathrooms. And so your butt. No, it's all subconscious. It's not you're not.
Oh, yeah.
You're not
Oh,
consciously
right.
suppressing, and the sexual urge is not being consciously suppressed.
Yeah.
But it's being suppressed out of your awareness, and then all of a sudden, you feel safe with someone, and it comes rushing out because it's been waiting in the wings to be excreted.
This metaphor's so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, I guess I should retract what I said earlier and say that in all likelihood, I did invent this way of seeing it because it's not likely other people see it this way.
Well, it's got a lot of Freudian stuff to it, and so maybe some sensory motor, early development, something.
Yeah.
Sort of wrapped up along inside, parallel to the metaphor.
It's definitely anal retentive, anal expulsive
Yeah.
metaphor is at least parallel to this.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it. The way that normally I would frame it is the more kind of standard is that, and I still believe this to be a worthy way of seeing it, is of that when you finally find a safe person, not only does your attachment needs pour forth, but all of your feelings and needs pour forth because you finally feel safe with someone.
Right.
Which I think is a viable way of seeing it, but
and lovely.
Yeah, but I also see it as this like specific sexual retention that has been subconsciously, sphinctered, if you will, for maybe a lifetime.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get home and your boner smells the toilet. So, yeah, Bob, you're saying maybe you should tell your therapist.
Yeah. They have. It won't be the first time they've heard it. It's totally cool and safe and nothing weird about it. And the benefit to you is to be found in the telling, in the not holding.
Yeah. What do you mean?
In the being accepted by the other, being held in decency and kindness. That's where the benefit is. I'm reminded of a story my first therapist told me 1,000 years ago. When she's a single mom, two kids, little at the time, and she had a good friend, and the friend had a son, so she has two daughters' son. They're little, like 3, 4, 5, some of those ages, and at one point they chucked them all the kids in the bathtub to take a bath because they were dirty or whatever. And the little boy, he stands up and he is humping the spigot with his little heart on while they're.
I think you told me the story.
Yeah, I probably did. I mean, I don't keep this one a secret. And, he's clearly just really enjoying himself, really just feels really good.
God, it does not sound like it feels good.
It's not my thing.
But do you know what I mean? Like it feels scratchy.
No, the water, not the spigot. The water.
Oh, just the water.
Just the water.
I thought you meant the actual spigot.
Yeah, right, right.
Like the pipe.
Yeah.
Oh, you're sure the
water.
the stream of water.
Yeah, he's just
I see.
Humping away at that, and they just sort of I guess enjoyed him and were very careful not to shame him for this thing. But imagine that you're with your family. These are the people that you're safe with. You're 4 years old. You're not thinking in terms of, Victorian weirdo sexual moral nonsense stuff that we sort of foist on everybody. You're not thinking about any of that shit. You're just being 4. And this is what you do when you're 4. Unless you're shamed. In which case, you go to therapy as a grown-up and you have sexual transference. I'm kidding. It's totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you proceed to metaphorically hump the attachment security that's pouring out of him.
Mm-hmm. You hump the couch.
Metaphorically. How would you feel if a client not only told you, because you've had clients tell you this before, right? What if a client told you that they masturbated to you? How would you feel?
I think I'd be a little bit surprised. My wry thought is, you can do better. And I'd be like, well, how was it? What do you want me to know about it? this is interesting.
What would be your hope as you talked about it?
My hope is that they just don't feel bad about it. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So that'd be my hope. And that would be my aim as, sort of a Catholic person who has his own weirdo, ideas about sex. Very careful not to shame my client, pass that on, any of my own shame, careful not to, but I hopefully not get in the way of just basically being candid, and it's a little bit funny. Not like laughing at my client, but it's all just kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about this very rare situation
Sure.
that a colleague of mine told me about, that you noticed that the client is actually humping the couch as they're talking to you?
Wow. I don't know. Let's see. Still same goal. Don't want to shame, but at the same time, that's outside my own limits. Like I was sitting with a couple the other day, and they were actually feeling affectionate towards one another. And I said what I often say, which is, I don't really have a whole lot of rules here, except you have to keep your clothes on. You have to keep your clothes on because that's just my limit. So just because I have a limit doesn't mean I'm going to shame somebody for it. I think if somebody was humping my couch, I'd probably ask them to stop, and because it's uncomfortable for me, and talk about it. Like, what's up? What's your body doing? You might be in your own autopilot to some degree, or maybe you're behaving seductively. Maybe you're wanting to arouse me. People do that, and so it's just an acting out of something. But it's an acting out of something. It's not like the way we idealize our therapist. That is not our therapist. That's an idealization. We don't actually know our therapist very well. We project on them quite a bit. And I'm not talking about that blank screen nonsense that, the Freudians, whatever. I'm just talking about we project all the time on everybody. We're always in the matrix. The matrix is the view of reality that I have, the glasses that are over my face that I can't tell are there, that color and shape the way that I see the world, what I pay attention to, what stands out to me in the stories I tell myself. It's all projection most of the time. So if I'm in a therapy session and I'm humping a pillow in front of my therapist, I'm acting something out that has to do with my narrative, and probably zilch to do with the actual person of the therapist. And a therapist's job is to work with that. But it's okay to have limits. Like, you have a limit. That would be mine. I'd be like, yeah, you can't do that here.
So with couples, are you saying that they have, are you saying that they have been physically, sexually expressive to each other?
No.
Oh, because you said you just have this.
It's a way to encourage. You guys can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You want to kiss?
Oh,
fine by me.
You're setting the bar so far away from what they would likely have an impulse to do.
Yeah.
That you're saying, look, it would take a lot to bother me. So if you want to hug or kiss or hold hands, that's a good thing. I see. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they did. They wanted to have a kiss, and they took the camera and just pointed it in the other direction. I was like, it's really good not watching you guys kiss. And these people had
like a make-out kiss or a kiss?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And these people have been affectionately estranged from one another since I met them, and so long before that. So for them to actually get to a place where they're having affection, genuine, playful, lovely affection, we're doing great.
Yeah. It's not something that is emphasized enough in couple therapy, that so much can be repaired and communicated and established through physical touch that you could never do in conversation. And
that's true.
We don't talk about that
right.
as therapists. We talk about emotion and expression and communication and trust, and those are all important. But for some people, for some couples, you can have atrocious communication, but if you can hug and kiss and cuddle and have eye contact and perhaps never verbally validate each other or verbally resolve any conflict, there's a world in which that couple is the most healthy couple on the planet. So much can be communicated and so much can be felt differently. Just think about, and given our touch-phobic society, one, we avoid those kinds of things, not only just as people, but also in our field. But also, we don't value it. We don't understand it, but it's happening, right? Like, if my wife and I were to have some bickering throughout the day or something, and then I were to go to her, she were to come to me and just silently hug meaningfully and just hug meaningfully. That's it. Just slow, nice, warm, quiet, silent hug for 2.5 seconds, then we're good. Like that repairs. Verbally, we could also work it out, but it would be like, okay, let's sift through this. What did you mean by that? I'm sorry for that. That's all great too. Mm-hmm. That's all great too. But a 2.5 meaningful, full frontal hug, if that also can do it, then it's a time saver at the very least. And it gets to the core of who we are as biological animals, right, which is the neurological and physiological reality and effects of that. When we are verbally talking, we're trying to indirectly affect that biology and that neurology. But if you can just circumvent the whole silliness and just go straight to the biology, then sometimes that's all you need. And for me, when that happens, it's so weird. I'll shift from this needs to be resolved to 2.5 seconds later, I'm just like, I don't give a shit about any of the things that have been happening. It's all in the past. What happened? I don't even care anymore. Yeah. It's magic how that works. Yeah. We can get so locked in. It's just like, I need you to acknowledge that this happened and that you are wrong. You must acknowledge it. You must take responsibility. And then you just hug them and it's, what? No, I'm good. I'm cool. I'm good. And you're not suppressing. You're just like, we're not baseline cognitive verbal creatures. We're emotional, biological creatures. At some point in our evolution, we developed language. Some hypothesized like accidentally. It's a product of other things that we needed to survive, and language just emerged secondarily to that. And it's not the end-all be-all verbal. And that lends itself to all the creative arts therapies and the movement therapies and the experiential therapies. Anyway, let's take a break. What do you say, Bob?
Yes.
All right, we're back from the break. So let's do an OPP. These people became patrons all the way back in 2021. Yeah. So we have patrons at the mug level. They received a mug in the mail.
I have a mug.
If they gave us their address on Patreon, because sometimes they don't list their address.
No mug.
No mug. Sam and Renata both are there. And then at the $10 level, we have Sahana from Vancouver, BC, Amanda from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Port Coquitlam. I feel like I should know how to pronounce that. Oh, these are all Canada people, by the way. We have ES from Surrey, British Columbia.
I've been there.
We have Sandra from Quebec. We have Christine from Montreal.
I've been there.
And then we have Teresa from Czechoslovakia, CZ. It was Czechoslovakia, then it was Czech Republic, now it's Czechia.
What was it before it was Czechoslovakia?
The Austrian Empire.
Oh.
David from Frankfurt, Deutschland, or Germany. Lucy from Great Britain. Call Me from Manchester, Great Britain. These are all patrons from other countries, middle-tier patrons that became patrons at the end of 2021. So thank you so much. All right, question. Bob, a therapist and patron from the UK. She says, Dear Kirk and Bob, I'm a psychotherapist from the UK. who has been tuning in for a long time to the podcast. I recently had a lull in my personal growth and personal therapy and wanted to reach out to let you know the impact your open discussions have had on me.
No.
I deeply appreciate the vulnerability that you share between each other and with us. It is inspiring to hear these presented so sensitively. When listening to Bob talk about his relationship with his own therapist, it has given me the inspiration and confidence to approach my own long-standing therapist and tell him what I wanted and needed from them.
Wow.
It has allowed me to find the courage to push myself further and into scary territory relationally. This has benefited me, although it has been terrifying. But more important to me, it has benefited the clients I work with, who I now feel more open with. Just chiming in. That sounds like something you would say. It's like, my therapy has helped me emotionally, but more importantly, it's helped me to serve other people, which is great to serve other people. But I'm just saying, it's like, well, I think I'd prioritize you over your clients. That's it's important to prioritize your clients. But just to add a question to them into the mix. So that's therapist, a patron from UK, just wanting to be complimentary to you, Bob.
That's nice. Thank you.
Just to add a question, I'm wondering what has helped you be more honest or push yourself further in your personal therapy journeys, whether it was a theory or a person or purely the therapist that you have. So I think what she's asking is, how do you, because that's what she's doing. She's having to push herself further. And so therapist to therapist, what do you do? What have you done?
To push myself as a client in therapy.
Right.
Well, one of the things I've done is accept feedback about the focus of therapy, wherein I used to think a good therapy session is if I, talk about my mother, and complain about some of her inanity or talk about a conflict with Colleen and, probably complain about something about Colleen and, anyways, and what my therapist does pretty consistently is he won't tell me not to talk about a thing. And he often will say, if it's what you want, then great. If it's what you want, and he'll encourage me to declare, I want to talk. I want to tell a story. I want to talk about that, whatever. And the focus is on what's happening between him and me right now. So the reason that's important to me is because those are smoke screens. They're often pseudo-therapy, I guess it's not a word he would have used, but it's a word.
Or indirect bids for closeness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, exactly. So what he wants to do is just put that on the table and make it explicit.
Right.
Over and over and over again.
Instead of, I want to talk about Colleen so that I get you to validate and be with me and not judge me. You can say, I just want you to validate me and not judge me. And maybe even more directly, I want you to be a safe person that loves me. Right.
Well, that sounds good.
What do you mean?
Well, I haven't thought about it before. It's like, what do I want? He'll just continually pose the question, but it never occurred to me I actually might want something like what you just said.
It never occurred to you? I thought we'd talked about that.
Well, maybe we did. I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Does that feel right?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, what else would it be?
I don't know. Could be lots of things.
Well, do I really want help with a problem? Do I really want him to validate and say, yeah, she's a jerk? Yeah, probably not. But ostensibly, that's what I might ask for or hint at, ostensibly. But, what's really wanted? I don't often know what's really wanted. I don't often have words for it. And like I was saying the other time we were talking about this, it's worse. Like, I don't want to pay attention to what I want. I don't want to notice. I freeze up. I am really dystonic about wanting in general, and don't want to. So I'm in therapy lately. I am frozen and upset and ashamed and probably scared. Yeah, I think scared and sad and have no words. And one of his working theories is that I'm, some kind of preverbal trauma thing going on for me or whatever, and it's very uncomfortable. I really hate it. But that's what it is right now. So that's what it is. So the question is, how do I push myself? That's how. I don't even know what kind of answer that is, but that's what I got.
If you think about the understandable desire to be loved and safe, loved by him, if you think about that, does that help? If you acknowledge that in your head?
I don't want to acknowledge that for some reason. I'm rather whiny right now.
Why don't you want to acknowledge it?
I don't know.
Don't want to give him the satisfaction?
Or you?
Me the satisfaction?
Yeah.
Why not? Why me?
Well, you're the one who said it.
But why would it be my satisfaction?
Yeah, right. I know. Right. Well, it is shameful to me to want. So like Colleen's like, I have chronic insomnia, right? You know this about me. And she'll be like, well, why don't you put on a podcast and listen to a podcast? That's a good way to go to sleep. She listens to Dateline shows, Dateline, Keith Morrison. Oh, he's got a great voice, but he's such a tool. I think that's part of why he has that job. Anyways, so, but she's like, yeah, I get how this works. If I suggest it, that's the last thing you're going to do. And it's sort of like, yeah, I am kind of like, if I don't come to it on my own, I don't really accept influence or feedback very much. So, and she might actually be right that listening to a podcast is a good way to go. And I think it's because she's the closest person to me. I have the hardest time accepting any influence from her whatsoever. And I know it drives her nuts sometimes. And but I don't like being caught wanting. It's like being caught with my hand in a cookie jar, I'm not supposed to want a cookie. So if I get cookies, I usually have to buy them myself and keep it a secret. Or donuts.
Literally?
Yeah.
It's not metaphorically.
Not cookies. It's this time it's Tony's milk chocolate bar. Oh, they're so good.
Tony's milk chocolate bar.
Do you have Tony's Chocolonely?
Let me Google these.
Now Tony's dark chocolate, very good. And lately I've been on a milk chocolate kick, and Tony's Chocolonely milk chocolate is really good.
Chocolonely.
Chocolonely.
It's kind of a sad name.
I know. I don't get it.
Chocolonely.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're saying that you buy these chocolate bars and you have to hide them because you can't be conspicuously wanting and consuming something in front of Colleen?
Yeah. When you say it like that, it just sounds awful.
I mean, it's very unfair that the internalized father is doing that to you.
Oh, I was thinking it'd make her mad.
It's not. It doesn't have anything to fucking do with Colleen.
Yeah.
She wants you to have chocolate.
Well, does she?
Certainly, if she understood the context, she would want you to have fucking chocolate.
Oh, okay. Then yes.
If she thought that it had to do with you feeling, she wouldn't want to have that foisted on her that you were hiding out of fear.
No,
about her.
No, I could
even
imagine.
if she had a slightly negative, like, oh, I don't know if that's the healthiest thing.
Right.
But if she certainly wouldn't say, and therefore you can't have it, you asshole, or you better hide it from me because that's like a completely other like ballpark. So it doesn't have to do with Colleen. It has to do with your internalized father and mother, really.
Yeah.
Well, that might even be more your mom in some ways, like the sandwich example.
Which one's the sandwich?
You came home and...
Oh, yeah, the egg sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mother's milk, if you will.
Yeah. When I was in fourth grade, so let's see, how old are you in fourth grade? You're 10-ish. It was 1976, so it was the bicentennial in Philadelphia, right? So.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It was a big deal in Seattle. I can't imagine Philadelphia.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I remember it because we were studying it in fourth grade, and now I think about all that stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, it's white guy history. But nonetheless, that's what we did. And so she took the day off of work, and she pulled me out of school, and we went down to Philadelphia and walked around and went to the Franklin Institute, which is like a science museum, and walked around historic Philadelphia, which is really really cool. And Betsy Ross's house is somewhere there, and nobody knows if she really made the first flag or whatever, anyways. And the Liberty Bell, though we didn't actually get to see the Liberty Bell, but they were selling little souvenir Liberty Bells, their pencil sharpener. And I asked for one, and she said no. And so I didn't get one, and I didn't really think much of it. And then, let's see, about 15 years ago, maybe. So I'm 57. That was when I was 10. So about 15 years ago-ish, I was visiting home, and she pulled one out, and she said, I always felt like a jerk.
Wow. Oh yeah, you have told me the story.
For not buying this for you. It was $7, and I don't know why I said no, but I did. I said no, and I always felt bad about it. And so I have this Liberty Bell pencil sharpener somewhere in my house. Yeah.
Wow, I forgot about that. That is strong evidence that she suffers from a similar shame spiral that you do.
Oh, yeah. My mom's very wrecked. And, poor lady.
Because presumably soon after she felt bad, but she sat with that for 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just...
like stewed on it.
Yeah, and probably, spent a bunch of that time denying herself and...
but also like beating herself up.
Beating herself. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, sorry doesn't... I think it's the only time she ever apologized to me. Like, I that's not her strong suit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But it requires confidence and stability and non-shame to apologize. That's the irony.
Yeah. There's something about it that bothers me. Like, I probably told you this story about my therapist I had a while back, not my current therapist. Really lovely. I really like her. She was very cool. And she, at the time, had a kid who was 22, daughter, and she sat her down one day and apologized for the things that she had done as a parent that she thought were a mistake, and went through a list, and, almost like a 12-step make amends kind of thing. But
how old is the kid?
22. And her daughter laughed and said, oh, Mom, no, these things were okay. But this other thing that you did, that one bothers me. And my therapist, very gracious person, she said, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. And apologized. I have never heard of a parent doing that. And yet parents, I think it's probably the toughest job anybody ever took, is to raise another human. And so you screw up. You just do. You just screw up. And I don't know why. If you mess up at work, usually you can say you're sorry.
Well, maybe.
If you're smart.
But I get your point is like, look, if you can apologize at work, a much bigger thing that you should be apologizing for would be any deficits in parenting.
Right. Which everybody has. To some degree or other, has screwed up and messed up their kid to some degree. Probably everybody, mostly not Jeffrey Dahmer. It's fine on the one hand. But on the other hand, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you apologize? Like, that's if you love the kid, right? You love the kid, and you messed up because all parents mess up. Why isn't I'm sorry part of a rite of passage around the age of 20 when your kid is lunching?
Well, throughout life.
Yeah, as it happens.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you love your parents, then why haven't you ever apologized?
Right. You swiped a bottle of bourbon and you took the car in the middle of the night and you smushed it into a telephone pole and they had to come get you at the cop shop. Right? Yeah. You should probably say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apologize is the bigger thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to say the words, I'm sorry.
Right.
Like with my parents, I've said many times things along the lines of, oh, I was really a piece of work. I was such a snot-nosed, teenage, arrogant, know-it-all 13-year-old. I can't imagine what it was like to try to deal with me. I didn't say I'm sorry. I didn't say those words.
But it's an acknowledgement that you...
But it's an apology.
Yeah.
And I'll add to the list. My parents have apologized to me many times.
That's good.
Not in that sort of therapist-y way.
But, yeah. That's maybe not important.
But my dad and my mom.
That's great.
And I know that they feel tremendous shame about their parenting, which is going way too far.
Yeah, right.
With the regret.
Yeah.
Like way too far. And I've, talked about it on the podcast with both of them. And
do you think it's an artifact of starting so young that they have the...
No, it's an
vulnerable spot?
artifact of their childhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, particularly my mom.
Regular.
Same as you, abuse and difficulty. And then it just gets internalized and then applied where it doesn't apply.
Right. We are great distorters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of parents that apologize.
Yeah. Nobody
in fact, I know a lot of parents who will apologize to their 4-year-old.
Well, I think that's great.
I think it's more of the norm now.
That's good. Yeah, that wasn't the norm for at least my norm. Yeah, that's just...
Yeah. In fact, you know some of the parents who I know have deeply apologized to their kids.
Really?
They're currently, parents now. Yeah.
Your friends?
Yeah.
Some of your friends that I know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Particularly dads. That's not the stereotype anyway from 50 years ago.
Well, that's really great, man.
But you deserved an apology. You had a slight apology there.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I was really surprised by that because it wasn't something that stuck to me. I'm used to my parents saying no.
But you remembered it.
Oh, yeah. I do remember it. Yeah.
And conspicuous consumption.
Yeah, that's really not my forte. So, finished the last of my Tonys last night, thinking I'm going to go there on my way home today.
Central Market's the best.
It is.
It has everything.
It does.
It has really good kimchi.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It has the daikon kind that I like.
The scallops have gone downhill, unfortunately, but everything else.
Even the frozen ones?
Well, that's what we used to get. Is they used to have frozen ones in a bin, and you just pick the ones out that you want.
Oh.
Now, I don't know how they do it. I think they're prepackaged or whatever, and I've had them, and they're just not as good as they used to be. And
have you gone to the other scallops area, like in the freezer with the packaged scallops?
Really?
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm guessing there might be some in there.
Well, I should look.
You should tell the butcher. They'd want to know that.
Oh, I should ask, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
They pride themselves. They got it all there.
They do, and it's a very good store, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not called Central Market anymore. It's called Town and
Country. I don't know why. I'm just going to call it Central Market because that's what I'm used to, and I don't like change.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too, Bob.
They're building a pet hospital there now, and a chicken.
Is that what's building there?
And a chicken restaurant, like a fast food chicken.
Oh. Anyway, let's take a break.
Well, what do we think about Krispy Kreme, though? They're cool, right?
I haven't heard any reasons to hate them.
Okay, good.
Why, do you like Krispy Kreme?
Yeah, and who's the other one? Top Pot. They make good
Top
donuts.
Pot.
Yeah.
The best donut experience by far that I've ever had in my life was... So, if people don't know, Krispy Kreme is a old school donut coffee place.
It is.
Mainly donut. From, I believe, the East Coast, I'm guessing.
I don't know. We never had them. Dunkin' Donuts, where I'm from.
Okay. Well, we didn't have them in Seattle.
Yeah.
And they opened up, I think, at least 2 Krispy Kremes in Seattle in the year 2002-ish. It was such a big deal. And one of them was in Issaquah. And...
Oh, right. I've been there once.
Me and my family, like the opening week it was there, decided to check it out.
Uh-huh.
And so we all stood in line. There was a long drive-through back up, but there was a physical line around the block.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of, it must have been Christmas time, it was cold. And it took like an hour and a half to get to the front of the line.
Right.
But since we're family and we're just chatting and stuff.
Right.
And what they did, the Krispy Kreme workers, to alleviate the annoyance of waiting in line so long, is they would take these freshly made, the kind of classic donuts where it's just glazed just ring. A simple, small glazed circle donut, straight out of the oven.
Yeah.
There was a glass wall that you could see the donuts being made.
Yeah.
And this worker with those plastic gloves just emerges out of nowhere and hands me this glazed donut. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. It was orgasmic.
Yeah, they're really good.
I've never had a donut like that. I'm guessing 5 minutes later, it lost 90% of its appeal, but right out of the oven.
Yeah.
Right out of the oil, I guess is
right.
Because they
fried. Yeah.
Yeah, they fry them in oil.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is so good.
Right.
And I've been chasing that dragon ever since.
Oh, yeah. Colleen got me into old-fashioned donuts. So if we take a break, can we get donuts?
Let's take a break. All right, we're back from the break. So, patron Mary from California, she has an important question, Bob.
Okay.
She says, I'm curious what Bob and Kirk think about this article that was featured in The Atlantic recently.
Oh.
She provides a URL, and she says, to summarize, 1,000 Australian teens were put into a study. Half got regular health curriculum, and the other half received a DBT-based mental health program. So 1,000 Australian teens, half get a regular health curriculum, and the other get a DBT-based mental health program.
Who are the subjects? Are they just random? Are they just pick a whole school or something?
Why are you asking that question?
Well, giving therapy to people who don't want therapy or don't need therapy is kind of weird.
Right. And particularly DBT.
Yeah.
Right. So Mary says, plot twist, and then quotes the article. The therapy, the DBT therapy, seemed to make the kids worse. Immediately after the intervention, the therapy group had worse relationships with their parents and increases in depression and anxiety. They were also less emotionally regulated and had less awareness of their emotions, and they reported a lower quality of life compared with the control group. And then Mary says, what do you think about this surprising outcome? The article cited participant age, reluctance, and suggests that focusing awareness on negative thoughts might have actually created worse outcomes. Based on your experience, what can explain this? How might we think about helping adolescents manage their mental health? Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, well, one possibility is part of DBT. I imagine what they're doing is teaching DBT skills. They're not doing DBT therapy, but they're teaching DBT skills. Okay, fine. And if one of the modules is going to be about assertiveness, then perhaps children at home are practicing the skills that they're learning and running into homeostasis where the system does not want to change. The system hasn't been primed to change. There isn't buy-in from the members of the system to actually do the change. And so you've got a squeaky wheel who's going to get, well, no, that's the wrong metaphor. But anyways, perhaps they're met with anger or resistance or frustration or irritation or shaming or whatever at home if they're doing something that's, new just because they learned it. Like I remember we had a very mild, meager assertiveness class when I was in 7th or 8th grade. Like really dumb. My teacher was oh my God, he was such an asshole. Anyways, I tried using some of that with my mother once, and I was in 9th grade, I guess. And she got really angry with me. So I could imagine something like that might happen in people's home life, which is going to have an enormous impact on, the things that got measured, their quality of life and whatever, their emotion regulation, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, the only thing I could conclude is we shouldn't give therapy to people who haven't asked for it. That's sort of true. I mean, I think that's true, but it's only partially related to this particular thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to look at the study, and I'm too lazy to do so. But there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, the notion that somehow DBT harms kids is ridiculous. There's been study after study after study showing, and the other thing is DBT isn't rocket science. It's emotional awareness and regulation. That's all that it is. It has a particular style of radical acceptance and mindfulness.
Yeah,
But
components, right?
huh?
The components.
Yeah. But it's just emotional awareness and regulation. And when you learn the actual curriculum, you could see how it has particular effectiveness than other kinds of programs, or at least it would be one of the better ones. But it's not strange, it's not provocative, particularly it's not avant-garde. Elements of it might be considered that, like if you see the facilitator with one of those meditation bowls.
Oh,
that,
yeah,
that
right.
you,
Singing bowl. Yeah.
that you gong or something.
Yeah, I have one of those.
It's just a noisemaker.
It's just a noisemaker.
It just makes a pleasant noise that's supposed to demarcate something, like now is the time that we're in class, or now is the time that you quietly practice mindfulness or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's not calling upon the ancestors or devil or whatever.
No.
I don't know. But the point is that that's all that it is. So something went wrong. And also, half of the control group was that they got a regular health curriculum. Mm-hmm. Well, the regular health curriculum could also have a lot of emotional awareness and regulation in it.
Yeah, who knows what's in that?
Right. Maybe a pretty good one. Also, if we're talking about 1,000 Australian teens were put into a study, and it sounds like, well, I guess I would wonder who were the DBT facilitators.
I was wondering that too.
Because if you just randomly grabbed high school teachers and trained them on it, then something weird could happen. At the very least, you could have teachers that aren't really bought into the model.
Right.
And at the worst, you could have people that have no idea what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because Bob has shown me that, through you describing your DBT teaching approach, that it takes charisma and wisdom and therapeutic skill
and years
to convey these ideas and to get people to buy in and to inspire people and to adjust to certain questions. You can't just walk through the curriculum without having that very specific therapeutic skill. I mean, I'm guessing that the average therapist, if you even train them on DBT, that if you just threw them into, especially a bunch of teenagers that are not necessarily on board with doing any of this, that it could be, annoying to do for everybody, the teacher and the kids included.
I like that, annoying.
Whereas a regular health curriculum might be a lot more tolerable. Yeah. It's a lot more down to earth, or a lot more simple or something.
Expected.
Yeah, expected. And so I maybe they accounted for all this in the study, and like I said, I'm too lazy to find out otherwise. But also, in addition to what Bob said of just it could create these effects because you're beginning the journey of healing, and that pulls everybody, including the client, but also the system, out of their homeostasis, which is going to cause disruption and upsettedness. You suddenly have a teenager that is asserting themselves, and that is not going to feel good to anybody, including the teenager at first, right? Mm. So not only that, but when you ask people who have been suppressing their emotions and have never been asked about their emotions, and have thus developed defenses to ignore their emotions, and you ask them about their emotions, then they might suddenly start acknowledging how they're feeling, and initially they're going to feel worse, more anxious, more depressed, more bothersome. So that's also a possibility.
How long was the program, did it say?
Right, that's the other thing, is I have a hard time believing that it was the entirety of DBT, which is a year of pretty intensive work. I imagine it was just a module or two over, who knows, maybe it was over a year. But anyway, the fact that The Atlantic ran this, it just shows that it's just clickbait. We have studies like this all the time. There are countless studies all over the board regarding effectiveness and harm. We do these studies to ourselves. We choose to investigate the efficacy of our own models. We don't need outsiders to do it for us. We do that all ourselves, and we're very careful to provide an unbiased evaluation of these things.
Right.
And yeah,
There's
if
a lot
you
of
cherry pick a study or two, you can find that all of therapy harms people. So when you take DBT into, if you take all the studies and you look at it, as with all the studies with CBT, you find that overall it's beneficial to people. There's a percentage that will be worse off afterwards, either just randomly or because they just don't fit with the model, or they have a terrible teacher, or they had a terrible classmate, or whatever. It happens. So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, sounds good.
But Bob, given your knowledge of DBT,
Oh, sure.
if there was a real effect here that was happening, and let's say that with these 500 Australian teenagers,
Right.
they were using DBT well enough. It wasn't fantastic, but that's not the issue. And it's not assertiveness emerging or emotional awareness emerging. It's actually the model. Like, let's say you were the one that taught these 500 teens, and you had, say, 2 months, and the data was there that the kids on average, compared to the kids going through the regular health curriculum, were, a little bit, not significantly, but a little bit more on average anxious, a little bit more on average depressed, a little bit more on average feeling worse. Like they wished they hadn't gone through it. They wished they had done the regular health program. What would be like a possibility that you would look at?
We did not involve families. Like most of the time when teens enroll in DBT, their families are part of the process. Like their families, and like my friends did family groups, so they'd have a skills group, be 6 families, 3 people, an identified client, which is a kid, and then a parent or both, or both parents or whatever, whoever the caregivers at home are, and they'd all engage. So they're all learning the same thing. So my guess is, if it were me, I'd be thinking, the reason this failed is because we did not involve the family.
And what negative effect would that have on efficacy?
I think it would just sort of set kids up to feel like shit. It would just set them up for that, because they're being handed something. It's like being given a car without ever been taught how to drive. Okay, great. Now you go get behind the wheel and you drive. You're going to have a bad day. I think that's probably what happened. Is they were, sort of the rudiments of this is a car. Here's where the steering wheel is. Now go drive. You're not gonna. That's not enough.
Meaning they needed more guidance, more mentorship, more help, more support,
more guidance, more mentorship, and more involvement, more proactive and involvement of the real people in their world, which is
right.
Probably a parent.
The students in your DBT group had an individual DBT therapist.
Oh, true. Yeah, they had an individual therapist, and they were also volunteers who were there for a reason. They weren't forced into it. They wanted it. They sought it out.
Right. They were also suited for the model, which is people who have a particular hard time with distortions and over emotional reactivity and downward spiraling and that kind of thing.
They either self-identified, or a caregiver, a doctor, or another therapist suggested that they do the thing.
Yeah, I suppose that could be one effect to look at anyway, that the model assumes a fairly high level of distortion regarding one's emotions, right? Because typically borderline individuals, right?
Yeah, typically.
And with them pre-recovery, they will interpret the smallest thing, real or imagined, behavior in their attachment figure as an indication of abandonment or betrayal, and then they'll get upset and downward spiral. And so a big part of DBT is to ask a question and to radically accept the possibility that that isn't actually what's happening, that you're not being betrayed or abandoned. And that's a critical component and very helpful to these folks. But if you have a bunch of kids that don't have borderline and they don't have that distortion, you can imagine a well-meaning facilitator hammering on that module and having kids start to second guess themselves or wonder, why am I being forced to believe that my perceptions are distorted or something? That's just another possibility. All right. Well, that does it for that episode in which I talked about crowning and going number 2. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.